Good day, Dogg for Mayor fans. I am, of course, Evan Benton. This is, of course, Dogg for Mayor, and we've got a lot of news coming out about the thing we're not allowed to talk about on here, YouTube. Basically, a mixed bag. The big thing, of course, is that the UK is ending all of its restrictions. I'm sure that a lot of people everybody's heard of that. They're going back to normal, basically, back to the new normal, whatever that's going to be. But on the other hand, certain other countries are increasing their restrictions. The state of Mexico I am in, which is Jalisco, has just implemented last Friday a magic potion mandate for going to clubs and bars, and I don't know. I don't see anybody enforcing it, to be honest. But it's Mexico. That's why we moved here. But so we're getting two very different outcomes to the event playing out right now, and it's just getting harder and harder for any observer, objective or otherwise, to maintain that science is playing a part in this decision-making process, or indeed that it ever did. So the big thing that I'm going to be talking about today is the World Health Organization issuing a new statement, and it's being reported that they're no longer recommending the magic potion for international travel. That's a little bit misleading, so I'll get into it. But I'm going to be looking at the World Health Organization document itself to see what they say. So let's get to it. First of all, this is the headline. This is the article people seem to be sharing from WION. I don't know where that is, but the headline is: the World Health Organization urges countries to lift travel bans and not ask for vaccination proof for entry. So that's two claims here that we'll get into in the statement itself. So let's go to the statement then. The statement: on the 10th meeting of the International Health Regulations Emergency Committee regarding the coronavirus disease pandemic. And so this is what we're going to be reading through today. And so this came out on January 19th. Today is January 22nd, I believe. And if you scroll down, you'll see that, so this is the 10th meeting. You can see that they have issued, here's the 9th, 8th, 7th. So if you want to go back and read all of these, I'll be referring to a few just to compare. But they've been doing this ever since January 23rd. January 23rd, a week later, January 30th, and then not until May was the next one issued. And this is just interesting to me. Think about where you were on January 23rd of 2020, January 30th. I think if you were like most people, you were barely hoarding toilet paper at that stage, right? But the World Health Organization was here planning, reacting, you be the judge, to this event. And they did not reconvene after that until May 20th, or May 1st of 2020. So that's just interesting. In New Orleans, our lockdown started on St. Patrick's Day, March 17th. Hard to figure that date. So May 1st, we were 6 weeks into it, and it's hard to believe that this organization was not conducting, meetings during that time. Just interesting to note. So back up to the top here then. I'm not going to read through most of this. Okay, this is just minutes of the meeting. The Director General emphasized the importance of vulnerable populations in all countries getting timely and equitable access to the CV. He encourages all efforts to expand access to and uptake of the V, with the expectation that those who have access to them will get them and continue adherence to public health safety measures. The DG, Director General, expressed hope that by working together, the world can bring an end to the acute phase of the C pandemic. So we're moving from the acute phase into the chronic phase, or the endemic phase, people are calling it. And it's interesting to note that we're talking about vulnerable populations. So we're sort of getting away from this idea that this one-size-fits-all approach is going to work, that everyone has to get the magic potion, and we're getting back to this idea that yes, certain populations are affected differently by the event, which is of course self-evident to anybody who's paying attention, but I digress there. Equitable access. I just wanted to note that there's a contradiction here between vulnerable populations and equitable access, right? Equitable means everybody. Vulnerable means vulnerable. So those are two conflicting strategies that the World Health Organization is attempting to implement here. And now, when we get into the people who are involved in this, right, I'm not going to get into all this, but Office of Legal Counsel, Department of Compliance, Risk Management, and Ethics, just these different groups that are involved in the meeting, and they were additionally reminded of their duty to maintain the confidentiality of the meeting discussions and the work. So before we start talking about this whole meeting, we're going to remind you that you're not allowed to talk about the meeting, and you're also not allowed to talk about the work of the committee. Okay, so this is not the minutes of the meeting. This is a report or a statement for public consumption, which was produced following the meeting, and each member who was present was surveyed. No conflicts of interest were identified. Guffaw. All right, and then we're just getting into the minutes just briefly. Things we're going to discuss include magic potion strategies and the use of heterologous magic potion combinations. And this is just laughable because just Google it on the Wikipedia, look up any magic potion, and tell me if you've ever heard of a heterologous combination being used there. So I mean, all of these things, most of them come from one institute. Speaking historically, of course, the Pasteur Institute. So the idea of multiple competing pharmaceutical companies producing, any sort of a potion, right, injectable, biologic, for say measles, is pretty laughable. This is something that's just never come up in medicine before, but here we are. So I just wanted to highlight this just to show the laughable state of the science, if we can call it that, regarding this whole event. And then the challenge is to maintain continued community buy-in for public health and social measures after 2 years of the event, and the risk of overly optimistic statements. So we don't want to let people know that there's really nothing to worry about, because they'll stop this community buy-in. But this is what we're really worried about. It seems, if we're the World Health Organization, is worried about this community buy-in. And if you've read the SPARS document, or if you've watched my 2 videos on that, you'll know that this is a major concern of these regulatory bodies, or these governing bodies. So this is the main focus of what we're going to be talking about here, is this idea of community buy-in. People are just opting out. They're not buying in to the event, and that's a problem if you're trying to use this event to implement some sort of social measure. Again, they're telling us right here. And then down here, we're going to talk about the need for an ongoing integrated One Health approach to surveillance, research, and response. So I talked about that in my last video, and check that again, One Health. Now, we're not going to see this term in the rest of the statement here, so that's a little interesting, but you'll see it's capitalized here. This is a big ideological aspect for the World Health Organization and for these other globalist groups. Continuing on, the committee praised South Africa for their doing good stuff with the Omicron, which sort of fizzled out already. variant of concern. The committee was concerned about the reaction of states parties in implementing blanket travel bans, which are not effective in suppressing international spread, as clearly demonstrated by the Omicron experience, and may discourage transparent and rapid reporting of emerging variants of concerns. So we're worried about the states not participating in our blanket rollout of the response. Okay, so good job, South Africa. Which, I mean, look at the South African regime. If we're praising them for anything, we're in bad shape to begin with. But this is what we're concerned about: the reaction of states parties in implementing blanket travel bans. So, to the point of that headline I showed here, that is the reason that they're giving. The committee noted with concern reports of violence against health workers, public health officials, and expert advisors engaged in the response. The committee condemns these acts that undermine national and global response efforts. So this is crazy, but nurses, basically what's going on is nurses are being harassed because they're telling people to put on masks and to take the magic potion, and the natives are getting restless. So this is the pushback that we're talking about at the very, at the grunt level, the nurse level, all the way up to the policymakers. Okay, health workers, public health officials, and expert advisors. That's even people like Mr. Fauci. It seems like they're sort of giving feedback to the World Health Organization, the top of the food chain that we're aware of, saying this stuff is just too hard. It's not working out for us. We gotta ease off. The committee expresses deep concern that countries not eligible for the COVAX facility advance market commitment are experiencing challenges affording the magic potions. So this is really interesting to look into. I'm not saying I have, but advance market commitment, okay? Advance market commitment, AMC, to buy the jabbies. So how many countries, small, poor countries are currently being bankrupted by being forced to buy these jabbies that they can't afford? This is going to be a really interesting thing that's going to play out as we move into the next phase, and as we the war turns hot here, possibly new alliances start being formed, and these countries might need that debt to be forgiven, because they might even start to seek legal redress because they feel that they were scammed into signing these agreements, right? Expanding tiered pricing and voluntary license agreements are other things, and we've heard all about the various countries having to put up their military bases for collateral to afford these potions. Just really crazy stuff. And then just a note to myself: the pandemic influenza preparedness framework is where the framework has been laid to implement this stuff. So it came from the influenza, the yearly magic potion regimens that we've been recommending for who knows how long. Now we're using it on this stuff today. Okay, now remember what I said above. To derive the optimal magic potion strategy for reducing infection, morbidity, and mortality, the committee stressed the importance of coordinating research on heterologous potion combinations, considering also the natural immunity following infection, that's rich, and the need for manufacturers to produce and share the relevant data. So remember what I said, that's basically never been done, and if you don't believe me, look it up. When I say never, I'm speaking in hyperbolous terms. Okay, I'm aware of a few cases where that's happened, but on this scale, never. And they're tacitly agreeing with me here as they say that, as they stress the importance then of coordinating research on heterologous potion combinations. So they're admitting that that's never been done, right? They're admitting that research is not coordinated. And for the first time here, we're starting to talk about, oh, hey, remember the natural immunity? Remember that, right? And then manufacturers to produce and share the relevant data. Again, preposterous. All right, another point in this paragraph here, the current strategy is dependent on syringes, which are limited supply, so we need to get away from the syringes. We're going to implement intranasal potions, so that's interesting. I'm not sure how I feel about this, but clearly this is setting the stage for just putting it into the air, putting it into the water supply. So this is coming. Don't make the mistake of believing that's not coming, especially in areas with low resources, right? And then this is a little bit more concerning to me. Scientifically, the clear need for continued work on potions that confer broader immunity across variants. So to me, this is setting the stage for just a one-size-fits-all, potion that everybody just needs, or not even Corona, you know what I'm saying? But any type of a virus might come about that we're all going to need this type of a broader immunity providing injection. Next, we're talking about diagnostic tests here. The committee recognized the challenges in sensitivity and quality posed by the multitude of existing diagnostic tests in light of the evolving virus and the lack of appropriate approval for some of their uses, for example, testing for access to facilities. So people are noting that the tests are being applied indiscriminately, and clearly the more time you spend on a test, this should make sense to people. The more time a test takes to be implemented or ran, like the PCR test, for example, takes a couple days to get results. The longer that takes, in general, the more accurate it's going to be. So if you have like a rapid test, it's not going to be as effective as a test that takes a long time, regardless of the fact that the tests don't work at all. But I've talked about that in other videos you can check out. It's just not going to work for people who need to know, are they going to be allowed to board that airplane? Are they going to be allowed into that football stadium? Are they going to be allowed into that supermarket, right? And then again, back to community buy-in. The committee recognized the challenges to maintain continued community buy-in for public health and social measures after nearly 2 years of the COVID event and the risk of overly optimistic statements regarding the state of the pandemic. The committee further emphasized the need to uphold, so we're kind of repeating ourselves here, but community buy-in is essential, and we're losing the narrative here. We're losing the plot, they're admitting. We unanimously agreed that this still consists an extraordinary event, right? Continues to adversely affect people. We've just got to keep the fear going somehow, and it remains a public health event of international concern, right? So down here, these are the actual recommendations to states parties. States parties means nation states, countries. And we're not going to go through all of these, but these are what people are looking at. So just in other words, this is all sort of preamble and just the minutes of the meeting, proceedings of the meeting, and then down here is the actual output to the state parties of the meeting. Okay, so number 1, we don't really need to talk about. Number 2. Mass gatherings, we don't really need to talk about. The only point here I would make about these two is that we're kind of saying a risk-based approach. So we're not talking about a one-size-fits-all approach to these situations. We're actually saying different mass gatherings have different risks and things like that. States parties, each nation has a different situation, so we're sort of delegating to the individual nation state here what they can do, and that's a little bit concerning to me, just that fact, because we're, if we're trusting the nation states individually, what sort of backdoor dealings went on to enable that trust. But number 3, I'm going to read. Number 3, modified from the statement in the 9th meeting, achieve the World Health Organization call to action to have at least 70% of all countries' populations injected by the start of July 2022, and integrate the injection into routine health services. So they're going to keep doing that, right? Routine health services, this just means, if you go to the doctor for any reason, they're going to say, hey, while you're here, why don't you take this mystery jab? And so at this point, if you trust the medical community going forward, God help you. If there's anything you learned from these 2 years, it's that these people can't be trusted, including your friendly neighborhood physician. They've simply bought into a control scheme, a means of conducting themselves and of conducting science that is unbecoming to health, really, health in population and health in individuals. If they're gonna, if you go in for a colonoscopy and they're gonna say, hey, while you're here, why don't you take this mystery potion? I don't need to belabor that point. And then number 4, enhanced surveillance. That's pretty self-explanatory. Rapid identification, tracking, and evaluation. And we're back to the global influenza surveillance and response system. I talked about that in my last video, which was when I talked about the One Health, which was at the beginning of this statement. But anyway, number 5. So now we're getting into it here. The changes. States parties should ensure that there is sufficient surge capacity for critical that care, and then post that condition. And this isn't new. We've always maintained this. We've always been threatened, right, with surge capacity. But the fact is that no hospital was overrun anywhere in the world after all of this. And the biggest problem was when they started firing healthcare workers for not getting the jab. And when I bring that up, I've got to go back and amend my earlier statement here, right? Where, for routine health services, if you find a healthcare worker who refused the jab, I would probably work with them. I would, be a lot more lenient towards them, but I wouldn't let them off the hook, because they're still, the 3rd largest cause of death is error. Okay, just learned that, but that'll be another video. Where was I? So the other thing that's new about this, specific to the risk of evolving new lineages, special attention may be needed for ensuring access to treatment for treatable immunosuppressive disease. So that is new and interesting. And to show that it's new and interesting, I've got the 9th meeting statement. See if I can scroll down quickly to find point 5 here. You'll just note, maintain essential health services, sufficient funding, supplies, human resources, strengthen health systems to cope with mental health, right? Concurrent disease, outbreaks, and other emergencies. So nothing here about immunosuppressive disease. And of course, the immunosuppressive disease is coming from evolving new lineages. It's not coming from any sort of experimental injection that we're supposed to give to 70% of the population. How could it? That's preposterous, you conspiracy theorist. Okay, now number 6 then. This is the thing that really matters for the headline that I showed. Lift or ease international travel bans, as they do not provide added value and continue to contribute to the economic and social stress experienced by states parties, right? And furthermore, the failure of travel restrictions introduced after the detection and reporting of Omicron variant to limit international spread of Omicron demonstrates the ineffectiveness of such measures over time. Indeed. And then base this on risk assessment, which continues on from the 9th meeting statement. Okay, but we're admitting here that none of this worked, and of course none of it worked because we're not dealing with an infectious disease. None of what we've seen over time have, indicated the idea of a person taking these particles from some place and spreading them to another place, right? Coughing and getting everyone around them sick because they're breathing in the air from the sick person. None of this has ever been borne out scientifically. None of this has ever been demonstrated, right? They've never even, I don't think, tried to get a single person sick. That's called experimental transmission or experimental infection. They did start a study doing that, but I haven't heard anything about that recently, probably because it failed utterly. But at any rate, here we are. We're admitting that the science failed, the methods failed. Well, there was no science to begin with, ever, right? But a complete failure, and so this is what we're talking about here, okay? This is the big news. Failure of travel restrictions after Omicron failed, to limit international spread, okay? And furthermore, they're causing social stress to states parties. So think about this here. Who travels? Are the everyday citizens traveling? Is this really are people not being allowed to go on their vacation to Cancun every year, and this is what's causing the social stress? No, the people who are traveling the most are the people who are wealthy, and they're probably not traveling for pleasure. They're probably traveling on business, and so we're talking about the managerial class, okay? The managers and the bureaucrats of the different states' parties are the people who are really being inconvenienced by the travel bans, okay? It's not you and me. It's not refugees. And furthermore, they're the ones who are in the position to complain to the World Health Organization. So my reading of this number 6, this easing of international travel bans, is that that's what we're looking at. And so just for the record, to see what they said in the 9th meeting, they didn't say we should all have travel bans here. They said continue a risk-based approach to facilitate international travel. And so they're basically saying through this, base it on risk, and it's the what do they call it? The state parties should be the ones making these decisions. So what they've done now with this statement, this modification to their recommendations, is now that they're just no longer recommending that states parties include that in their bags of tricks. Okay, so that's the big news for this statement. Now, number 7, this is the one I think that's tripping people up. They're recommending that they do not require proof of the jabby against the thing for international travel as the only pathway or condition permitting international travel given limited global access and inequitable distribution of the injection. So, I mean, yeah, that's good, right? If you were just hearing that out of context. But the problem is we go over to the 9th meeting and we see exactly the same wording. Do not require proof of the injection against the thing for international travel as the only pathway or condition permitting international travel. Okay, so again, back and forth, do not require proof, not require proof. So they've never required proof. So even if you go back to the 6th meeting now, and you scroll down to find where they're talking about health measures in relation to international travel, at the present time, do not introduce requirements. Remember, this is on January 15th, 2021. So the jabby was brand new at this point in the game. Do not introduce requirements of proof of the injection or immunity, which is again rich, for international travel as a condition of entry, as there are still critical unknowns regarding the efficacy of the jabby in reducing transmission and limited availability of said. Proof of the thing should not exempt international travelers from complying with other travel risk reduction measures. So they never, and you can go through, if you don't trust me, go and read statements on the 7th and 8th meeting, because I'm skipping them, and you'll see that they more or less resemble this in the 9th statement. Do not require proof of injection, experimental medical treatment. So they've never had that. That's all come from the state actors. Then, an important point to make in this whole analysis of what's going on here. Okay. All right, but anyway, continuing on. So none of this is going to be super important. We're just going to skip over it. But we're talking about the combinations, right? The combinations of the jabbies, and this is again just wacky. But they're saying recognize all. So every state should recognize all the injections that have received World Health Organization emergency use listing. So stop doing your own scientific testing or regulating, and just use ours. Then is what they're saying. So there's two levels here. Just like in the United States, we have emergency use, and then we have full FDA approval, right? We have two different levels here: emergency use, and then the SAGE recommendations is this is the supposed to have some idea of science backing up these different recommendations for the combinations, right? Heterologous combinations. And so there's a lot to get into here, and it's not very interesting or really relevant to human life. But an interesting point is that, so this is this current status, okay? December 23rd, this is the most recent report on the current status of the jabbies according to the World Health Organization, okay? So this is emergency use, this is not SAGE. But so we can look through and see the check, this is fine. Pfizer-BioNTech is good. AstraZeneca is good. Covishield from India is good. The Janssen is good. Moderna. And we're getting into China. China's good. Sinovac, again from China, is good. And then back to India is good. India again. There's so many of these. I don't know if people are following how many of there are, but there's a huge number. Novavax, I don't know where that's from. But then look, Russia, oral Russia with Sputnik 5, not approved, okay? So this is interesting geopolitically. Why is Russia just dragging its feet on this process? And interestingly, so Russia did not even submit information to get World Health Organization approval until December of 2021. So we're looking, or sorry, November of 2021. We're now at December of 2021, and we're very early in the process for even looking at Sputnik and considering it, right? So why is Russia not playing the game? And then back to more. These are all from China. China is playing the game. Russia is not playing the game. So we're not seeing support for the whole idea that the American media and the American government and intelligence agencies are trying to spin as Russia and China being in collusion with all of this, right? Or with anything, really. Then number 9, this is just community engagement, communication gaps, right? Infodemic is a great word, a new word for me. And then misinformation and threats. And putting misinformation and threats in the same sentence is pretty disingenuous, I would say, but you don't need to read this to figure out what that's about, right? Propaganda, pure and simple. And number 10, so this is a new one. If you look at the 9th one, right, we just have a little blurb here: support uptake of World Health Organization recommended therapeutics. And now we've got a little bit of an expansion on that. So the therapeutics are just basically brand new, and we're working on implementing them. But there's those other therapeutics we're not allowed to talk about, right? And then the final, conduct epidemiological investigations of transmission at the human-animal interface and targeted surveillance on potential animal hosts and reservoirs, real-time monitoring and data sharing. So this is our One Health, okay? And again, we're just tacitly admitting that this hasn't been done, okay? We're 2 years into this, the biggest, disruption in human life in 100 years, and we haven't done this research, okay? We haven't done this basic research that the entire event is based on, okay? The entire event is based on this theory of human-animal transmission. And if you read about the theory leading up to this, we're saying, that this is what's going to happen, right? Years ago, these very same people have been making this claim that because of all the global warming, because of all the deforestation, because of the increased interactions between livestock animals and wildlife, we're going to see more of these types of diseases spring up. Okay, and they're not even doing the research to support these claims. They're just not even doing it. And hopefully I get somebody to come on and claim that they are, and to show me where they are, and I'll take a look at those papers as I have done in some other videos, and I'll show you that they're just number one, they're not very high quality research, and number two, there are massive conflicts of interest and just very interesting connections between these different global agencies and the research. So that is the statement from the World Health Organization that has gotten some people up in a kerfluffle about, and that's my reading of it. And so just as a conclusion, it does appear that the narrative is falling apart. We are headed to the new normal, the next stage in the PSYOP, whatever that means. But I'll be here. Keep tuning into Dogg from Air for my analysis, and please keep supporting my work. Allow me to keep doing this stuff. And just the final note, I want to talk about what the new normal is going to be, what the old normal was. Okay, the old normal was the boiling frogs, or the frogs in a pot analogy. Where if you increase the heat slowly enough, the frogs don't realize that they're being boiled alive, and that's what happens. Okay, so we are those frogs in a pot. Prior to 2020, we were those frogs in a pot, and the heat was slowly being turned up and turned up and turned up, and just very few of us were getting out there and doing the research and realizing that, and trying to get everyone else to realize that. And we've been experiencing this massive pushback from our friends and family. I'm sure everyone who watches my channel can relate. So what happened then with the event that we're on the tail end of now is that was the shock and awe version of that, where they were trying to just threaten people with this massive with death, right? Threaten people with death. You'll die, grandma will die if you don't do what we say. Okay, and what they did is they saw how well that worked, and my reading of it is that it worked very well, first of all, but they did not stop that because the people stopped, because the people didn't go along with it. Okay, the peons, the underlings, they did it because their very managerial class came back and said, well, the people aren't going for it. Okay, so I would have liked to see pitchforks and torches. Realistically, I think that's what we need at this point in time. And what we got instead is the managerial class sort of reporting back to their higher ups in the chain of command that they were getting too much pushback from us, right? The henchmen, the underlings. And so to some extent, I mean, that is good. That is the way it works, or the way it should work, but let's be our own managers here, basically. Let's get rid of those guys, and then let's definitely get rid of the people at the very top, because they are just pure parasites, and that's their ideology, right? Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. And here, I just want to make a little point. I think this belongs here. In case you didn't know, This is the way the world works, okay? When I talk about managers, I'm talking about presidents, prime ministers, purported heads of state. These are all just middle managers in this big old pyramid scheme. And every single one who has been elected has a little envelope of photographs or videotapes of them doing bad things. Okay, and I'm not gonna get into what those might be, but bad things with children often, and bad things with like drugs and things like that. And that's how they're controlled. So they have a blackmail dossier or file on them. Okay, and this is how the event transpired, was implemented in 2020 up into the current year. Is they were told to do this, or these facts were going to be made public. Another analogy people give is the silver or lead, right? So silver is like money, lead is a bullet. So either if you go along with what we're doing, what we want you to do, we will make you very happy and wealthy. And if you don't go along with what we're doing, we will kill you and your family. And so just that's the way this stuff works. You look at your politician, that's how they got elected. They agreed to participate in this system, and this has been going on for longer than most of your grandparents have been alive. Yes. So in terms of it being planned, okay, in terms of this, like, is this a good thing that the pressure is coming off? Is this trust the plan type of a scenario, or are people acting behind the scenes, like the white hats, the good guys? Are they putting a stop to all this? Are the different lawsuits playing out? Well, I mean, to some extent, sure, but I think you have to consider that the people who are doing this kind of stuff are very smart, and they're working on a very, very long time scale that most people simply can't imagine. Okay, they're dealing with intergenerational wealth, where none of them had to work for their money. That's the real difference. Most people think a doctor's got a lot of money, right? Or a software engineer's got a lot of money, but these people have never worked a day in their life. That's the difference. Okay, the real difference between the ruling class or the upper class and the middle class or the professional class, the managerial class, is that the managerial class still has to work. The real ruling class doesn't have to work. They were born into it. Okay, you can't just work your way up, right, and get into that class from the managerial class. That's the difference. So going into this, you have to just picture yourself as one of those people, and the plan, is just going to be, how far can we take this? We've got a plan. Let's see how well the plan works. Let's see how much ground we're able to take. Let's see how many rights we're able to take, how many freedoms we're able to take. And then at some point, we know we're going to get some pushback, and let's just see what that pushback is. And then, when we come back, when the tide recedes, we're going to have gained that much more ground. The people will be that much less able to resist us the next time, and we'll have that much knowledge, going into the next wave. So the tide is turning for sure, and I want to just talk about that a little bit, okay? Because yes, it's very tempting to just wax like sophisticated about this as a conspiracy theorist, and to just say, well, they did plan it, right, and they have more plans, and it's just inevitable, and you get really just depressed by that, because you start to think about how much resources they have, and so how few resources we have. But the fact that this is a point of weakness, even if they're making the decision to pull back, right, even if it's a controlled retreat, right, a tactical withdrawal on their part, that is still an opportunity for us to advance, right, and to take back some of what we have lost, okay? And that's what we need to do. We need to, at this point in the game, we need to redouble our efforts. We need to increase, you know, our attempts to, you know, do YouTubing and demonstrations, the extent that works. The extent that, okay, well, the gamble that they're making is that they're giving us more information, okay? They're giving us, even though, yes, they own the means of distribution, YouTube and Rumble, right, are all owned by them, we're using them to do things that they don't want. They want us to just be sharing cat videos, you know, and things like that. And what we're actually using them is we're actually doing research and putting out information about how we can be more independent and not need them, basically. And you can get, you know, take your health into your own hands and be less fearful for the next wave. That's the whole point, okay? Because this is what's happened. Everything they've gotten because they've made us afraid. And the less afraid we are, the less power that they have. Okay, their entire power base comes from fear, right? So this is what I'm saying. Don't get discouraged. If you get discouraged, you are playing exactly into their hands, right? And just get out there more and more and more every day. And this is what I'm doing. And again, I'm going to make a little plea for your support here. If you like what I'm doing, would you please give me a little bit of support to allow me to keep doing this, keep putting food on my table. And then the final point is the lack of science, which is just writ large throughout this statement. These people's own words. Okay, if you read them, you have to see that they're telling you that they haven't done the research. They haven't done the research. They've made these outlandish claims. These outlandish claims of fear and a global response, a unified response, a one-size-fits-all response, and they just haven't bothered to do the research to back those claims up, and basically no one is even asking them, okay? So that's what we're here to do, okay? Is ask them that, and to you know, ask your friends, right, who are not, you know, who might be asleep, who might not be aware of all this kind of stuff, who are afraid, why they're afraid. Who do they trust? Why do they trust those people? Okay, so on that note, I'm going to end the transmission for today. Please share this video. Please leave some comments down below. Subscribe to all my different platforms, please. And if you got another one you want me to upload videos to, you know, leave a comment and I'll try to get on that. Thank you very much for watching. This has been Evan Benton of Dogg for Mayor. Thank you and good night.